Cupertino Senior Television Productions, in cooperation with the League of Women Voters of Cupertino-Sunnyvale, is pleased to present an analysis of the measures on the June 2010 ballot.
Proposition 16 is on electricity supply. Most of us currently buy electricity from either an investor-owned utility like PG&E or a publicly owned utility like Silicon Valley Power. There are a few customers, mostly very large customers, who contract with a different electricity suppliers, one that's not their local utility. If a public utility wants to supply electricity in a new area, in a larger area, that new area generally has to be annexed. And that annexation, that taking of the area into the realm of the local government, would usually require a vote in the area that's changing its status, the people coming in, but not necessarily a vote in the original area of service. There's also been in recent years something called community choice aggregation, or CCA. And there the local government doesn't set up its own utility, but it contracts with an energy provider other than the local investor-owned utility to buy electricity for the whole community. There's only one CCA in California so far, but a number of communities have been exploring the option, usually pursuing greener power or cheaper power, or both. Now, when a CCA is set up, the norm in that area changes. So customers would now get their service from the CCA chosen supplier unless they specifically opt out to stay with their former utility. Creating a CCA can be possible with a vote of the local elected governing board and without direct local voter approval. And if a CCA is set up, the local investor-owned utility is required to cooperate with them. Proposition 16 changes things. Requires a 2/3 vote of the people in order for local government to do certain things if those actions use any public funds. The things they'd need voter approval for include starting up a new publicly owned utility, having an existing publicly owned utility provide service to a new area, or creating a CCA. Some of those things currently do require a vote of the people. Under current law, that would always be a simple majority vote. Now, Proposition 16 does provide for exceptions to that new voting rule if the voters have already approved those proposed changes before the proposition goes into effect, or if the local government is only making changes to the contract for its own internal energy use, or if the changes are solely for the purpose of providing specific renewable energy sources. Now, this clause is generating a lot of argument because opponents are declaring that Proposition 16 will virtually block municipalities switching to greener power suppliers or becoming a CCA in order to buy energy from a producer with a greater emphasis on renewables. And yet, in the proposed law, there is this exception that says that public funds can be spent without the 2/3 vote if they're solely for the purpose of providing power from renewables. Well, our analysts went over the law and the arguments at some length, and our tentative conclusion is that the proponents are pointing to the exception when they say there's really no problem with green power, and the opponents are looking at where it says solely to provide green power and thinking that phrase can be used to block switching to a supplier that merely provides a higher percentage of power from renewables, but not 100%.
I see. So now how does Proposition 16 define public funds?
That would be tax revenues, payments from electricity customers, bonds, borrowing, pretty much any money a local government is going to have its hands on.
Okay.
And remember what we learned back in Proposition 15. Public funds can't be used for campaigning. So if local governments dislike Proposition 16, and they do, they can't spend any money saying so.
Interesting.
Who else is for and against 16, Elaine?
Well, officials from the California Taxpayers Association and the Chamber of Commerce signed ballot arguments supporting Proposition 16. And they say that, like other local financial decisions, electricity supply decisions should require a 2/3 vote of the people as a safeguard for taxpayers. Unlike the ones we've talked about so far, this proposition is shaping up to be an expensive campaign with over $28.5 million spent, donated to the Yes campaign by PG&E so far. About $18,000 has been donated to the No campaign by the Utility Reform Network. So signing ballot arguments against, we see officials from AARP, the Sierra Club, and the Consumer Federation of California. And they say that Proposition 16 is about protecting PG&E's for-profit monopoly on electricity.